that we do, women in our roles, and how we can better center our wellness around what we do and how we do it. When I named the session, Thrive to Lead, the reality is we can't really lead lasting change if we're constantly operating at capacity, if we're overwhelmed or we're burnt out. Those are just the facts. I'm sure every single person here has experienced that. And so we want to talk through that. And the simple truth comes forward where wellness is not separate from leadership. It's the foundation of it. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We have, yeah, we have a big group today, so almost 50 folks already. So hello, my name is Corrin Wendell. So I am the immediate past chair of the Women in Planning Division. I've been a part of the Women in Planning Division since 2015. It is my favorite division if I have to choose which one. I have been uplifted, supported, and on the shoulders of so many women who have come before me in this division. And it started in 1979. It's had many amazing chairs. The current chair is Caroline. She's on the call, just in listening mode today as well. I'm the founder and executive director of Youth Engagement Planning. I have a small consulting firm, Future Focused Strategies, that I run. And I've been in local government planning for about 20 years, as you may know. And I wanted to share a fun fact. Fun fact, I swam from Alcatraz back to shore. Yes, I did. And that was amazing and terrifying at the same time. Me and 800 swimmers took two ferries out to Alcatraz, and it was the Alcatraz Shark Fest swim in San Francisco. And we all jumped off the boat, and then they sounded the horn, and we raced back to shore. So about a mile and a half or 2 miles later, with the current, because you have to like swim this way, and then the current like brings you like to where you need to go. Full wetsuit. It was awesome. And I would like stop along the way because I was so curious of like, I'm in the bay. This is so wild. Like Golden Gate Bridge, Bay Bridge, like this is amazing. The Ghirardelli sign in the distance, calling my name for some chocolate. And I just hightailed it back to shore. And it was super fun. I want everyone to share maybe in the chat, maybe where you're calling in from or zooming in from, and maybe a fun fact about yourself that maybe nobody knows. So maybe something you did, something that you're proud of, interesting fact, maybe you climbed the tallest peak in your region, maybe you did the Pacific Northwest Trail, like whatever it is that you have done that is like, just maybe outside of your planning self, and maybe share that in the chat. Would love to see all of that. So, as we know, we are celebrating Women's History Month. Very exciting for our division to showcase all types of programming to make sure that we are celebrating and uplifting, supporting women in our division and beyond. We have many, many, many amazing members of our division, and it has grown significantly in the past decade. So we're very proud of that. So all of our programming kind of looked like this throughout the month of March. You may have been on one or many of these programs, and this will close us out for the end of March. And this is really just a way for us to celebrate each and every one of you, and to bring us into community and to have time together, to be able to focus on each other and what matters, and do a little check-in. Also in the chat, I would like for you to maybe name a woman planner in your life that inspires you. I shared this photo earlier in March when we did the WPDU 103 class for storytelling. These ladies on the screen here, including myself, were my grad school friends. We became friends in grad school back at Ohio State and have continued to remain friends to this day. Colleagues, we work together on YEP as board members. Amelia has actually stepped away from the board, but we are all still super fun and close and always excited to get together. We'll be seeing each other at the National Planning Conference, usually where we get to meet up and have fun. But as part of the Women in Planning Division, we're always looking for ways in which we can open the door for the next woman behind us. That's very important to our mission and who we are and what we do. And so women are force multipliers, said best by Michelle Obama, the Queen. So we cannot get away from that. Women are inherently able to uplift and support each other and give a level of care that is just, just incredible. So we just celebrate that. So here is sort of our flow for the day and what we're looking to do. We are looking to have a little bit of, just a welcome and sort of framing what we're going to be doing, looking into a little bit of wellness as a strategy. How do we map our capacity? Looking at boundaries and micro habits. We will have time for a small group discussion. I know we have an hour here, so we're going to leave ample time for us to discuss some elements as a group in small groups. We'll be put into small groups, talk about a 30-day action plan, which is amazing because tomorrow is April 1st. So this is a great time to have a 30-day plan. And then we'll close at the end of our session. So for today, we are going to kind of look at what it really looks like to have wellness as a strategy. By the end of this, we will be looking at applying that evidence-based wellness strategy, looking at invisible labor, workplace norms, and then building that 30-day action plan that you can actually use in your day-to-day capacity, which is amazing. So as we kind of kick this off, when we talk about professional wellness, we're not talking about stepping away from work, really. We're talking about intentionally designing how we show up within our work. And so leading research across the workplace wellness, organizational psychology, and public health reinforces this idea. Studies from organizations like the World Health Organization have identified burnout as an occupational phenomenon, and it's not a personal weakness. So it's a result of that chronic workplace stress, and that hasn't been, if you haven't successfully managed that, that just becomes chronic and in your day-to-day. And can cause a lot of other things that, start to not go so well in your day-to-day environment. And so what that tells us is that wellness isn't about just those individual habits. It's about how we structure our time, our expectations, our environments. Also research from the Harvard Business Review and workplace performance studies, they consistently show that when professionals actively manage their energy, so all of your energy, and not just your time, they can experience higher productivity, better cognitive performance and decision-making, greater resilience under pressure, and stronger leadership presence. And then also from a neuroscience perspective, this is important as well, where when we are constantly operating in a state of stress, our ability to think strategically, regulate emotions, and then make sound decisions is actually impaired. So when we talk about wellness, we're talking about kind of protecting the part of our brain responsible for leadership. And then additional research highlighted even in Minnesota here, the Minnesota Department of Health, in their workplace wellness initiatives, they show that organizations that prioritize employee wellness and well-being, they see increased engagement. They see reduced absenteeism. They see a lower turnover and also improved organizational outcomes overall. And so we really want you to walk away from this discussion today with wellness is not separate from leadership, but it is a core leadership competency that you can have within your arsenal. And then once we understand that, the next question kind of becomes, how do we actually manage our capacity in a way that allows us to lead sustainably? So personally, in my own career, I thought being a great planner really meant saying yes to every single thing. Everything and anything I was asked. Excuse me, silence that. And every project, every meeting, every opportunity was just thought about saying yes to everything because I just felt like, oh, well, I guess I can do it. So I'm just going to say yes to it. And I was doing meaningful work. It was meaningful, but I was also exhausted. It was exhausting to say yes to each and everything. It stretches you in a way that you don't then have the capacity to really fully do the things that you want to do. And so I realized that I wasn't really building that sustainable career, but I was like sprinting through it. It was like too much, like a blur, and I couldn't really concentrate on each individual element because there was just too many things that I was trying to handle at once. And so today, it's really about shifting from survival to sustainability and then into leadership, which is the core of what we do. So professional wellness, it's not just one thing. So it is really multi-dimensional. And what's important is that these dimensions don't operate in isolation. They start to interact with each other. And you can see those elements there listed below. For mental and emotional health, we talk about, this is how you process stress, you manage your emotions, you build resilience. Research in occupational wellness shows that chronic stress doesn't just impact how we feel, but directly affects our cognitive function, our memory, our decision making. It's really just that mental fatigue that starts to kind of creep in. And then if you are overwhelmed, it's not just emotional, but it starts being more neurological, and it impacts how you lead. In terms of physical energy, we all know this. If you've ever pulled an all-nighter in college, you know this very well. Or maybe you're managing too many projects at work, you know this all too well. It starts to take a physical toll. And this is often most overlooked, but it is foundational. Energy is really your leadership currency. Think about it like that, your currency. And if your energy is depleted, your effectiveness, that then follows. And this includes your sleep, your movement, breaks that you take, the ability to recover and not just push through. It's really important, if anyone has maybe competed in sports or have done, I was a swimmer growing up as that's why I swam from Alcatraz back to shore. But as a swimmer, you have your practice, you have your meets, and then you kind of have your cool down or your recovery periods. And so that is on purpose. Athletes and others, whether you're doing something mentally or physically in life, you can't just be operating on 10 all the time. There has to be a little bit of a recovery that comes from that. And that actually helps you push further the next time that you're able to try, that race or that maybe the several meetings that you have coming up. You need to be able to recover mentally before you can undertake more things. And so we don't burn out because we care too much. We do burn out because we don't recover enough. So we have to leave time for recovery in between. Also, relationships and support. So you see that there, all of the different things that connect our relationships. And so this dimension is not about connection. It's who supports you, how safe you feel in your environment. So research consistently shows that psychological safety, so the ability to speak up, ask questions, and be a human, be yourself at work, is one of the strongest predictors of team performance. So if you are a team lead or a manager or a boss or a director, look to your team to ensure that you have the strongest team when you're able to kind of have that psychological safety within the doors of your office. And so for many women in leadership, this also includes navigating that invisible labor, which we'll talk about a little bit later, those emotional expectations and the unspoken pressures that we all have, especially women. And then that last point there for purpose and meaning. This is where motivation lives. This is where your work aligns with your values. It fuels you. Your purpose is why you do what you do. It's why you're awesome at why what you do. And so when it doesn't, it really drains you. And even if you're successful on paper, like no human is able to overcome, constant pressure, constant, going, 10, 100 miles an hour at all times. So it's especially true in planning and community development. So we do work that is deeply tied to impact. Like planners, we really care about what we do. We care about who we are interacting with, who we are impacting in our communities. And so we take on a little extra layer of that. We provide a service to people. And so we are deeply tied and service oriented. And so purpose doesn't eliminate burnout, but it makes the work sustainable when paired with those boundaries. And then also just to mention your work environment. So you need to have a work environment that is also sustainable. There have been times in my career where I had to move along because the work environment was not sustainable, and it was not the best for me. And so you have to be able to evaluate that and see what is best for you, what are some of the values and your purpose, that align with that to make the best decision for where you work, who you work with, and that fuels also your purpose as well. And so as we get into a little bit of capacity building here, I want you to think about your energy like a resource. It's not unlimited, but it's renewable if it's managed well. So capacity mapping. So we talk about having capacity, like you say, oh, I don't have capacity to take on another project. Like, have you ever mapped your capacity? Like, what does that look like on paper? What does that really mean to you? What do you have on your plate? What can you get rid of? What can you actually add to your capacity? And so capacity mapping starts to identify what is draining you, what's sustaining you, and then also where you might need some changes or making a little bit of an adjustment. And so in this first exercise, this is something that you can do on like your own, whether it's in your phone notes or paper and pencil. I want everyone to kind of take a moment and list 5 things that currently drain you energy-wise, 5 things that are a source of energy and that fuel you. And then once you do that, I want you to identify one shift that you can make. And then we're going to share a little bit in the chat here. So take some time. We'll take a couple minutes to be able to write down for yourself. This is personal. All right. So everyone, you'll be able to identify some things. If you don't get to all 5, maybe save that for later today, maybe this afternoon, where you have more either quiet time or you're taking some time for yourself. All right, so now, okay, so take a look at your list. So what stands out to you? And then from your list, again, you're going to identify one shift that you could make in that. And then in the chat, I want you to share one thing that you listed as an energy source. So when you wrote maybe 5 things down that give you energy, you could share in the chat maybe one thing that gives you energy or is a source for you for energy. And then if you want to, if you feel comfortable in the chat, share in this sentence, I'm shifting away from this, and then name it, and then towards this. So I'm shifting away from this, and then name it, and then you're going towards this. You could say, I'm shifting away from having back-to-back meetings to giving myself 15 minutes in between meetings to have a breather. So start to name that in the chat. I want to kind of see the variety of things that people might be able to have there. What are you going to reprioritize? All right, some folks are saying creativity is their energy giver. I love that. Ooh, Michelle, not thinking about work at home and shifting to something else. Yeah, where is your shift? Where can we be intentional about shifting away from something that's not giving us the energy that we need? It's draining us. I love this. Taking a break in the sun, going for a walk, working out. All of these are great energy sources. Very, very Very good. And you can continue to think about your shift, where you could be shifting that energy. All right. Now we're going to go into a little bit of boundary setting and kind of what that can mean, or maybe reimagining boundaries. Sometimes I think about how I thought about boundaries like 20 years ago when I first started in planning and what that now means today. And I feel like my mind has shifted a little bit into what I can actually do to set boundaries and not just pretend that there are boundaries there. Because I was saying yes to everything, so I had no boundaries. And I felt like if I said no, that I was being mean. That's not the case. So lesson learned, right? So I hope to impart that on everybody here so that you don't make that same mistake that I made. So talking about setting boundaries, because this is where many of us struggle, as we know, me included. I'm a yes person. I want to acknowledge something up front. So it's not just about a time management issue because I feel like women are so gifted at time management. It's unbelievable. The amount of things that we can get done in a day is unreal. It's for the Olympics. It's really more cultural, it's professional, often a gendered issue that we talk about that. And many of us have been conditioned to be available, be helpful, be responsive, and say yes, especially in leadership roles. But over time, that kind of creates a pattern where your capacity is constantly being exceeded. You can't even take things off your plate before two, three, four things are added to your plate. So, they're what allow you to kind of think clearly, lead strategically, and then sustain your energy over time. So research, again, in the workplace wellness and organizational behavior shows that individuals who set clear boundaries, they experience less burnout, lower burnout, higher job satisfaction, and improved performance. And importantly, so teams with leaders who model boundaries actually perform better because the expectations are clearer and more sustainable. So I know that when I have led teams where we have complete, free thought, we're able to have this, higher level of communication between us, have the boundaries established early and often, we're able to be more successful over time. And that has been proven in research. And I'm sure you have felt it in the workplace when that has been established versus when it has not. And it does make a huge difference. Talking about that, invisible labor, this is especially important when we think about women in the workplace and what they take on. Women in leadership in those roles, they often take on emotional support. They're taking on extra coordination and unrecognized responsibilities. And then without those boundaries, the labor becomes normalized and expected. It's just like, oh, well, Corrin has said yes for the past 20 years. Why would she say no now? Like, I've established a pattern. And now it's going to be hard to break the cycle, but we're going to break it today. Today's the day. And so we have to make that shift. There wasn't a boundary here. Now there is. It's really interesting, especially in public sector work, when they say duties as assigned in your job description. I feel like that is a not nice line right there, because no matter what, if you are trying to set boundaries, they're often older, whiter males who then try to rely on the letter of the law and like, oh, well, I can assign you anything at all times because it's duties as assigned. Not really. Sometimes it's not even a part of your job description. And so that boundary and that communication, I always felt had to be really articulated and really present in those conversations so that it was very clear what was acceptable and not acceptable in terms of taking on new work, different work, work that did not align with the job I was hired to do. And so when we talk about a little bit more in the boundaries, what did they look like in practice? So you could say, I'm not available at that time, but here is when I am available. I could take a look at this next week, but not today. So timing, when would this work better for your schedule? You could say, that's outside my role, but I can help connect you to the right person. So I feel like women are always trying to just meet that relationship threshold and bridge the gap. That I think we inherently do that. Everybody is welcome for that because I think not all people do that and are careful or caring in the way they talk to others. So boundaries, they don't have to be big and dramatic, but they can be small shifts. And so it could even look like not responding to emails immediately, or like when you're off the clock or you're home, like maybe that's where the boundary comes in. Blocking a focus time on your calendar, not over explaining your decisions. Ending the meeting on time, not going over just because you feel like someone would like for you to spend more time on something. The smaller boundaries, when consistently applied, can have that bigger change. So I remember a moment in my career where I realized I became like the go-to person. In my work, I did a lot of smaller communities, which I love. I have a heart for small cities, but also in that comes kind of a smaller staff and a smaller budget where you're expected to wear 100 hats. And and the budget to pay you is not always there. So becoming a go-to person seemed like an asset. But then it felt good in the moment, like, oh yeah, sure, I could take that on. But then it also meant that I had no space left to actually lead. I always felt like I was very drained and I couldn't do kind of that long range planning. I couldn't think out into the future because I was so taken aback with all the things I had to do in the day to day. I was left without enough time to do sort of that forward thinking. And so it really helped me shift not being that go-to person. And that is okay. That is a boundary that you can set. And I had to shift. And the shift wasn't saying no to everything, but it was being intentional about what I did say yes to. So planning the Christmas party every year? No, we can rotate. We can rotate people. Being able to, bring in treats every Friday, like, oh, why don't we make that a shared task? It's not just for one person. And so forth, to be able to just kind of share the load with everybody else. And so boundaries are not just personal, they are a leadership behavior. So over time, they do start to become more behavioral, which is great. And then when you do set your boundaries, you are modeling sustainability, you're creating clarity for the team, and then you're shifting that workplace culture. And so boundaries are not really a barrier to your impact. They are what make your impact possible. So you could just have that further impact. All right, so now that we've talked about protecting your capacity, now we're going to talk a little bit about how you actually restore that in kind of small, consistent habits. So we call these micro habits, small increments over time, making a big difference. So you don't need a big life overhaul. We talk about maybe 5-minute resets between meetings. If you ever had back-to-back meetings, especially Zoom meetings, they are exhausting and very draining. And so making it a cultural norm to have space in between that, maybe walking instead of sitting all day. I would be like locked into my desk chair all day long and I wouldn't even know like what time it was because I was just doing task after task. And then I didn't get a break. And so making sure that I was putting in walking breaks, even getting up to like go make copies, or now I work from home. So I like, okay, let's do a lap around the lake, so that I can get a little bit of fresh air and take a little bit of a mental break. So, even pausing before responding at an email, just instead of reacting, have a pause. And then also limiting that screen and digital overload that you may get. Maybe when you do go for that walk, maybe it's without your phone or without headphones, and just kind of having a little grounding exercise where you're like, looking at trees and, the beauty of where you are, and really taking that in. So small micro habits are really going to make a big difference. Talking a little bit about that invisible labor adds to a lot of the burnout that we talk about and just the lack of capacity. And this is something that often goes unnamed, something that women experience tremendously. Invisible labor, it's the work that keeps teams functioning, but it's rarely recognized, measured, or rewarded, unfortunately. It includes things like being the person everyone comes to for emotional support, taking notes at the meetings, coordinating all the schedules, mentoring others informally, smoothing over conflict, anticipating needs before they're even stated. Those become more of that invisible labor that's happening. And if you're thinking, oh yeah, that's me, just know that you're not alone. We have all been there and experienced something, just like that. And so research says across, organizational psychology and the workplace equity shows that this type of labor is disproportionately carried by women and underrepresented professionals. So planners of color and women see this more in their day-to-day. And then the Harvard Business Review describes this as non-promotable work. So essential tasks that don't actually contribute to advancement, but are critical to team functioning. So this could be something that is part of your 5 things that drain you and a shift, an area where we could be shifting. If you are taking on any of this invisible labor, let's take one off the list or 5 off the list, and making sure that you are doing what's right for you and centering your purpose and your priorities, and not having to endure the invisible labor. As we know, women are behind in the gender pay gap. And when there are promotions or other types of, title increases, salary increases, the invisible labor is not part of the why that they are, promoting or giving that bump, especially to men. It's not listed. Oh, well, he handled all the emotional support in the office. Therefore, he's going to get an increase. So that is something that we just need to recognize, and as a culture, begin to change within ourselves and in how, the office functions as well. And so when we're looking at other parts of invisible labor, you're seen as working more, but not necessarily being seen more, which is awful. And it also impacts equity. When some individuals are consistently doing this work, they have less time for that strategic thinking, as mentioned before, less visibility in leadership spaces, and fewer opportunities for advancement also. So that is something that we just need to kind of realize and continue to work through. Invisible labor is not new. This is not a new term. This has been going on probably for centuries. And so this is something that we can begin to name and acknowledge and move in a new direction, in a new way forward. And so, people don't leave their work, because they can't do this work. They usually leave because the weight of the work is distributed unfairly between folks in the workplace. So I remember being in meetings where I would automatically start organizing the next steps, like, oh, this is what we need to do. And following up, making sure everyone felt heard, everyone went around the room. And then I realized later that myself, had not actually contributed to the conversation and my own perspective in that decision. And so I kind of left myself out of the decision-making, of being seen a leader, of having that leadership role. And so making sure that even if you are the person who is doing that, and that is what a facilitator does, do not forget about yourself and what you can contribute to those conversations. And just because you can carry it doesn't mean you should. We all know that. So talk about a little bit, within maybe your workplace or with your other, professional, women planners in, what invisible labor are you carrying? What are you defaulting into? And then what are you not being recognized for in the day-to-day? And so this is really not an individual issue. So it's not individual, it's a systems issue. This is within the system that we're working in. And so organizations need to recognize and name that invisible labor, distribute it more equitably among everyone, and then ensure it is valued and not just expected. So, when we make invisible labor visible, we create a space for more equitable and sustainable leadership. Okay, so now that we've kind of talked about a little bit of invisible labor, we're going to shift to our own behaviors and the systems in which we work. So a little bit of strategy for organizations. So if you lead an organization or are a director or you are part of a systems change, you're able to change the systems within your workplace. This is where we can really come to the table and be able to be a valuable asset to how things change. Because if we don't speak up and name the things that need to be named, we'll see very little change in our workplaces. And so we talk about creating that psychological safety, offering flexibility, recognizing contributions, and then normalizing rest. When we have that recovery, we have those rest periods. That is very important for the group. And that is something that we can do collectively. So now we are going to shift to a little bit of a small group discussion. We have about, let's see, I'm going to leave about 15 minutes for us to, we're going to be broken up into rooms, into small groups. And I want us to have a little bit of a collection of just our experiences and to be able to share openly, share as much or as little as you want, however you are comfortable, of maybe where you are stretched. Talk about this week, talk about today, talk about this season of your life, and maybe what boundary is needed. What have you recognized in yourself of a boundary that may be needed? And then maybe what organizational change is needed. What is something at your workplace that you see could really use a little bit of changing? And then we'll share one takeaway within the group. So Caroline's going to break us up into groups, and then we'll have about 15 minutes, and then we'll come back to the group to finish up our discussion. So we'll leave about 15, 20 minutes. Also in the chat is the take-home handout for you to do later, whether it's this afternoon or if it's later today. Or later today or later in this week to be able to go through. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing here. So we have our group, and then I'll. All right, everyone should be coming back into the main room. Welcome back. Welcome back from your discussions. I think we have almost everybody back. All right. That is usually the favorite part during any of our webinars, is being able to talk with other amazing women, professionals, and allies to be able to talk through some of the things that are happening in our day-to-day work. And so I'm going to continue on here a little bit, and I want to make sure that I meet our time as well. But when, just kind of talking about a little bit of our value-based filter. So we're leading into this 30-day plan that you could do for April, which would be so fun just to be able to kind of line up all of these elements together. And so before we build the plan, we want to give sort of a simple filter. So ask yourself when you're building your plan, so does this align with my purpose? So we probably talked a lot about purpose-driven work. Does this sustain my energy? So we're looking for energy givers, not takers. And then also, does this create a meaningful impact? So this is something that is going to have you really be proud of the work that you're doing and have that impact that you mean it to have. And then if the answer is no, you don't need to eliminate it immediately, but just redesign it. Think about it in a different way. And so when we talk about our plan, 30-day plan, we're going to think about establishing 3 habits. And then we're going to be having 2 boundaries that will help protect that. Then you're going to have one person or one partner that can hold you accountable. So whether that's somebody at work, somebody in your personal life, professional life, and then you just want to look for tracking. So tracking your energy, tracking your focus along the way. And that's just going to help you. Then you can look for ways to measure your progress. So definitely, we're not going for perfection here. We're just kind of managing those micro habits and micro elements that could just make this a little bit better. And track things like your energy, your focus, your stress, your alignment. How aligned do you feel with the plan? And just get small feedback and small data from what's happening. And then just be aware, have that self-awareness of things that are really becoming sustainable and things that maybe are not, and then making a shift along the way. So I thought this was really great. I wanted to add this because in your 30-day plan, just think about each and every night when you are kind of winding down, before sleeping, you want to really think about what is helping you, what is not serving you, and being able to kind of cut through that a little bit. And so I just think about planting those seeds that are going to be able to have that new growth and new possibilities and inspire you. And so this is something that, we want to focus on, just having those little bright seeds that you think about for yourself and what would really serve you and give you just that greater purpose that next day. Is it abundance? Is it being worthy, feeling love, feeling capable, safe, open, and feeling enough? And so visually, I just thought this was really great to, kind of sprinkle those seeds. We are getting into spring too, which is a really fun planting season as well. And for just thinking about renewal, regrowth, and growing in, new possibilities. And so, as we kind of look at, closing this out, as you may know, this is the year of the horse, the fire horse in, specifically. And so last year with the snake, where we were kind of like shedding away all the things that didn't serve us, now we are charging forward with the fire horse. And so we are going to be utilizing the things that serve us, the energy givers, and using that as a force to move forward. And so as we kind of look at this closing a little bit, we want to focus on starting one of those changes that you identified today, stopping one thing that maybe was not serving you, sustaining that leadership over time, and then really making wellness a priority for yourself in a way that serves you in the best way. You are your greatest asset. And so you serve everyone around you, and when you are well, everyone else is well. And so we want to use that to our advantage. And so I really want to thank everyone for being here today and sharing, what is important to them, sharing with others in our small groups, and being able to be a little bit vulnerable. These are kind of vulnerable topics. And so we thank you for your, just being, just available to be able to have those open discussions. As you know, Women in Planning Division, we love all of our members. If you are not yet a member, want to become one, this is your way into the membership, and all the fun things that we get to do together as a group. And again, I just want to wish you all a closeout for Women's History Month. Thank you all for being here today. And we look forward to seeing you maybe at the National Planning Conference, or maybe on our next book club, or coffee chat, would be great as well. So everyone just have a really great week. Try and fill out your take-home handout today. Spend more time on yourself wherever you can. And that is just going to make you a better leader and just a better human all around. So, and we want the best for everyone. So thanks again. If you want, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always like wanting to see what other cool women are doing in their day-to-day professional life. So that's a great way to connect, or head over to the Women in Planning Division website for more information there, to connect with all of the executive committee members, and our chair. So once again, thanks so much for being here, and we hope to see you again at a later date. Take care.